It's about the restoration of our republic. We want to educate, encourage, enable the power. We stand for integrity, honesty, self-reliance, self-defense, and most importantly, no compromise on our foundational principles. This is America's Voice Now.
Find America's Voice Now on Facebook and at americasvoicenow.org. Here's Michael Evans.
Good morning, America. You're listening to America's Voice Now. My name is Michael Evans. I'll be your host this morning. Appreciate you riding with us today. If you are joining us live on our website, that's great news. Thank you very much for being with us this morning. You know, we're going to cover 4 different topics this morning, as we try to do every day, and I think we're gonna hit on a couple of issues that America really should be cognizant of. The first is going to be Edward Snowden. You know, there's discussion out there about amnesty for him in return for his returning certain documents that he has not exposed yet, and which they're very, very fearful that he might expose. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that. The question is, should he return those documents in favor of his personal amnesty? We'll kind of explore what the issues are. Our second segment is Ted Cruz. You know, the word is out that Cruz is extraordinarily popular. In fact, there was a recent poll that showed him to be the 3rd most influential person in the world as a leader, behind the Pope and Obama. And we're going to talk a little bit about that, because I think it's going to shed light on what we're seeing in the GOP and the betrayal that we constantly see happening from the party that you think represents you, but in truth actually does not. Our third topic is going to delve a little deeper into that, which is the GOP equals betrayal to constitutional conservatives. I've got to tell you, the Tea Party, you know, saved the GOP in 2010. And today we're experiencing betrayal after betrayal after betrayal from these people. Why? Well, the answer lies in what they're doing. But the truth of the matter is that what we're seeing is a consistent betrayal of the principles and the concepts by which they have committed to, one, or to the oath that they've taken and commitment that they've taken to protect our nation and to protect us from government itself. You know, the Tea Party came out and has a headline out there, Boehner has declared war on us. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the truth, because they don't want the budget that he's put together with Ryan. Well, rather than adhere to his oath and his principles and reflect the integrity and the honor that he should be representing as an elected representative in Ohio and, of course, for the nation, because as Speaker of the House, he wields enormous amounts of power, Boehner is turning on those who elected him and trusted him. So the question is why? Well, his corporate masters are calling in their loan, their margin call, if you will. And the principles that he espouses, he sold out on a long time ago. He would rather at this point in time align himself with betrayal and tyranny, because the price of his adherence to the rightful duty which he swore and took an oath to represent would result in his dismissal from his power, his dismissal from privilege, money, and perhaps even his own personal demise. Never underestimate the ruthlessness of these people who are handling, and I use that term in the military and the intelligence community mannerism. Never underestimate the ruthlessness of these handlers. All right, our final segment is going to be malfeasance in office. There was a hearing which I posted up on AVN and on our Facebook page the other day about and it was from the Wall Street Journal, where there was a hearing about Afghanistan. And the representative asked some questions of these 3 people who, one was an ambassador and there were 2 others there. And the truth is that they couldn't answer the most basic questions, i.e., how much money are we spending in Afghanistan? And how many soldiers have we lost, either killed or wounded in 2012? And the whole video is only about a minute and a half. And what it tells you is that this shows you how little these pencil-neck geeks and these bureaucrats care about the soldiers that they claim to revere so much. It's actually shamefully disgusting. This was a hearing that was supposed to be about Afghanistan by the people who are responsible for everything that occurs there. And they couldn't answer how much we spend, and they couldn't answer how many of our sons and daughters have been killed or wounded there in the last 12 months. You see, here's the problem, folks. To them, it's all just figures on paper. If you walked into a corporate boardroom with this level of unpreparedness, you'd be fired. They wouldn't even give you a chance to clear your desk out. They would call security in and walk you to the door. In this case, because they're dealing with American lives and American treasure, they should be tried for malfeasance and hung. Did you hear what I said? This is an appalling, shameful abuse of their authority and their power, and it shows you that they're not interested in what really is happening here. This is malfeasance on a level which is beyond that of a failure to do your job well. This is criminality. This is a betrayal of our nation. This is a betrayal of the lives of our children, our young men and our young women who are over there fighting and are being sold out by scum in suits back here in Washington, D.C. These people, what do they do all day? Play poker on their computers? I mean, how can you not know how much money we spent in the last 12 months? I mean, it's inconceivable that these people could literally go onto a House hearing well, okay, I'm going to get into this one. I'm so angry about it that I almost want to just blow the entire rest of the show on talking about this. Because what this shows you is, in fact, when you watch that video, I'll play it for you. I can't show you the video, but I can play you the audio. I mean, at the end of this, the senator actually says, holy cow. All right, let's talk about our first topic. NSA officials are actually considering an amnesty for the return of the documents that Snowden has gotten that he has not yet exposed. Now, the truth is, and by the way, there's a 60 Minutes expose out there about the NSA, and I got to tell you, if you for a moment think that you should trust what they're telling you on 60 Minutes after their latest Benghazi spectacular, then the joke's on you. You see, what this really is more of what I have said to you over and over and over again. First and foremost, the shame of this issue is that these people who are in power in the NSA would rather show their submissiveness to the world. They would rather cower on their knees to get these documents back than they would to actually stand up and say, go ahead and do what you got to do, Snowden. Because the alternative is, if they were to do that, Snowden holds so much damaging information that they would have a global revolt on their hands if he ever released this trove of data that he's got. You see, Snowden has, according to an NSA representative, the keys to the kingdom. What he could do, and the way in which he could damage the dogs of war, is so devastating to them that they will do anything to keep that information from falling into the public's hands. They'll tell you that it's about protecting secrets from enemies. Never forget that they consider you the enemy. Now, there's an interview as part of this 60 Minutes puff piece where they throw out a couple of questions to Alexander and some other guy at the NSA, John Miller, and they're trying to. And here's the problem. You see, this is just more cover for what's really going on. He neglects to ask them the real questions. He talks about how they're only monitoring some 60 people internationally, and you know how they can't, if it comes back to the United States, they get blank screens and all that nonsense. We don't hear the call. We just see the information on the call. We see the to and the from number. And we didn't have this capability before 9/11, and that was a factor in 9/11 because we didn't know that the guy who was plotting all this was in California, talking to guys in Florida. And if we'd only had the capability. So here's the worst part. Leggett, the guy who's in charge of trying to figure out exactly what Snowden got away with, he says he's got about 1.7 million documents. And actually, he was asked if if the 1.7 million was accurate, and he says, I wouldn't dispute that, which means that it's probably far more than that, and they just don't want the public to really know how much is out there. And they ask about how he did it and so forth and so on. The real issue here is that what John Miller from 60 Minutes fails to do is to ask the real questions. Like, okay, so since you cannot go and get this information here in the domestic United States, what you do is you simply transfer that information over to the FBI, who has a direct public pipe back to you, and the two of you then sync your efforts. So you're going over on the overseas side, and then on the domestic side, the FBI is doing all your dirty work. And I got to tell you, never let them fool you into thinking that that the FBI is not funneling everything that they're doing. And the FBI's work here domestically in the United States is just as pervasive as all of the stuff that the NSA is doing internationally. The only difference is that they have the, quote, alleged legal authority to do that domestically, where the NSA doesn't. But when you hear the way in which they try to explain away and couch and protect themselves, you got to realize what's going on here, guys. The simple truth is that what they're doing is giving you legalese in an effort to try to protect themselves from really criminal prosecution. You see, the real issue here is, they say that they're not actually capturing the content of the phone calls. But they do say, but they do have the capacity to decode private conversations. Regardless of what you're told by the Ministry of Propaganda, specifically related to anything to do with national security, NSA, FBI, all of the surveillance going on, all of the spying, the National Defense Authorization Act, which I broke on Friday for you guys, and I broke down on Friday for you guys to tell you exactly what's really going on with that and why all of this spying is going on. Regardless of what the Ministry of Propaganda tells you, never for a moment doubt that this regime is not only capable and is using that capability to track your every movement, your every thought, your every action, your every word, and your every deed. They don't. It's a legalese, plausible deniability scam. The capability for the NSA legally does not reside with the NSA. So what they do is they have the FBI do it. They have the alleged legal authority to violate Americans' Fourth Amendment rights. It's all smoke and mirrors, folks. That's the simple truth here. And this present government and the regime, and I use that term in its strictest sense, the present regime in our government right now, regardless of what party is at the head of this snake, is determined to turn our nation into a totalitarian slave state of terror. Mark my words and ignore them at your peril. Because the truth is, what's really going on here is they are building dossiers and enemy lists. I'm telling you right now, you can pretend. Look, the proof is in the pudding, and I talked about this the other day. They are rushing to approve this 2014 National Defense Authorization Act, and by the incorporation of this, the new parameters within this new NDAA, they will be able to build and develop the Conflict Records Research Center. Now, that document storage will incorporate a digital research database, including translations and facilities. And facilities to research and do analysis on records captured from countries, organizations, and individuals, now or once hostile to the United States. Now you understand what the term belligerent act constitutes. It's a vague statement of a belligerent act that makes you now or once hostile to the United States. And because your ability to get into a court and your habeas corpus rights have been rescinded, you have no access to courts, you have no access to a legal representative, you have no access to counsel, no one even knows you're missing or where you are, and they don't have to tell. You're held in indefinite detention under the NDAA, and you can be held for a belligerent act. No one defines what a belligerent act is, and you can never get to a court to have the judge say, that's not a belligerent act. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's a circle. And now, with the incorporation of these Conflict Records Research Center, and let me tell you, what they define that they can capture, the captured record, is any document, audio file, including phone calls, video file, including anything that they're capturing out of your webcam on your laptop or on your home's your television. All these new televisions have webcams built into them, and they can turn them on remotely. So it's any document, audio file, video file, or other material. Now here's the key words. Captured during combat operations from countries, including the United States, because the United States is now, under the 2012 NDAA, listed as the battlefield in the war on terror. Organizations captured during combat organizations from countries, including the United States of America, organizations, and individuals, now or once hostile to the United States. Make no mistake about it, folks. They are laying the groundwork for a surveillance system that would rival anything that any tyrant down through history has accomplished. And the end goal of this is very simple. I know that people don't want to think that our folks are this corrupt and this dangerous. But I've got to tell you, you're making a mistake if you think they're not. If you believe that they are not really this nefarious and dangerous, I got to tell you, the article out there this morning in Yahoo News, Snowden fuels fear of Big Brother USA, ought to tell you something. You see, the Ministry of Propaganda is out there covering and protecting the national government and what they're doing. You know, don't underestimate the logical fence you sit on. If you're a Democrat, if you support that, if you are a liberal or a progressive, if you are a conservative, if you are an ultra conservative, if you are a constitutional conservative, if you are a Republican and you're just kind of waking up, let me tell you something. This example here of everything that's happening around us is emblematic of the desperate and ruthless nature of these people that I refer to as the dogs of war. They inhabit this government, and they utilize every dirty trick in the book to accomplish their task. There's a song which accurately represents it, and I've played it before during the course of when we're sitting here and discussing these issues. And the reason I do is because it's extraordinarily representative of what's going on here. These are men of evil, and they are willing to utilize the Machiavellian principle of the ends justify the means. What they don't recognize, and they've completely capitulated to the dark side on this thing, is that the ends don't justify the means. Good cannot come from evil. It never has been able to, and it never will. Irrespective of how you try to rationalize that, how you try to provide some level of correlation between the fact that we're going to accomplish good by doing evil, the end never ends up that way. You know, the lyrics to this song are so appropriate. The dogs of war and men of hate. With no cause, we don't discriminate. Discovery is to be disowned. Our currency is flesh and bone. Hell opened up and put on sale. Gather round and haggle. For hard cash, we will lie and deceive. And even our masters don't know the webs we weave. You see, the truth is These people are operating, for all intents and purposes, outside of the boundaries. There's an article this morning about the guy caught over in Iran who's been over there and held since 2007. Turns out that he was operating based on CIA's intentions. They had him over there secretly on some black op. Well, here's the problem, folks. This thing is made up. I mean, the lyrics of this are perfect. Invisible transfers, long-distance phone calls, hollow laughter in marble halls. Steps have been taken, a silent uproar. It's unleashed the dogs of war. You can't stop what has begun. Signed, sealed, they deliver oblivion. We all have a dark side, to say the least, and dealing in death is the nature of the beast. One world, it's a battleground. One world, and we're going to smash it down. The dogs of war don't negotiate. The dogs of war don't capitulate. They will take, and you will give. And you must die so that they may live. You can knock on any door, but wherever you go, you know they've been there before. Well, winners can lose, and things can get strained. But whatever you change, you know the dogs remain. Ladies and gentlemen, that lyric, and you may not like that type of music, and I don't really care whether you do or not. The simple truth is, this is the state in which we are operating. These folks that are out there today, I watched a movie the other day called Inglorious Bastards, I think it was. It was a movie that had Brad Pitt in it about how they tried to blow up a bunch of key Nazis in a movie theater. And the truth is that the level of conniving and scheming and skullduggery that was represented in that movie is extraordinarily accurate, in the sense that that's exactly what's happening to our nation today. And I know most Americans don't want to think that way. I know we don't want to think evil of our own government. But I've got to tell you, we are now in a point where we have all the empirical proof that we need. And it's not that we suspect things that are wrong. It's that we have empirical proof that all we've suspected for over a decade is actually happening. The Ministry of Propaganda, or the MOP as I like to call them, would soft soap this tyranny to you to soften that blow. But the truth is, if any of these journalistic organizations had any integrity, they would expose this treason with accurate language, irrespective of the consequence, just like Snowden. But nobody has the brass to just say what everybody is already thinking. Well, let me tell you, I do, and I will. It's a police state, folks. We're in a fascist regime that is intent on the destruction of the principles and the fabric of everything that has made this nation the wonderland of the planet. Any soft peddling of what is really going on to the contrary All right. We're back. You're listening to America's Voice Now. My name is Michael. I am the host here. Appreciate you folks that are riding along with us this morning out on our website. I can see a bunch of you out there. See you guys up in Chicago and Lincoln, Branson, out there in Clarksville, Baton Rouge. See you out there in Seattle. I see you out there in Maine. Glad to have you. You know, what's going on with the issues here of Ted Cruz is kind of interesting. Lately, the GOP has completely and utterly missed the boat. The Tea Party is furious that the people that they put into office in 2010, when they literally saved the bacon of the Tea Party, or of the Republican Party, excuse me, they saved the bacon of the Republican Party. There's no denying it, folks. They were in a complete and utter rout. And the Tea Party went up there and on the flank knocked back the enemy enough for the House to regain its footing. Now, many of those who went in there under the auspices of constitutional leadership and a return to constitutional government have completely and utterly betrayed their constituencies back home and fallen prey to the corruption that is inside of the administration and Congress. You see, the real problem here is that when we're talking about this level of corruption, there is almost nothing that is sacred. The Tea Party is actually stating that Boehner has declared war on us. And he has. He is trashing those constitutional conservatives. They routinely throw guys like Ted Cruz and Mike Lee under the bus. And yet, the poll out from Rasmussen says, whom do you consider the most influential person in 2013? I'm going to read you the answers. Pope Francis got about 22% of the vote. Barack Obama got about 20%. Some other person got 12%. Nobody really, it's just an unnamed person. And the fourth person, or actually the third person in line as an individual, is Ted Cruz. You know why? By the way, the others were none. And then below that was Edward Snowden. So, and below that was Vladimir Putin. Then came Boehner, Chris Christie, Miley Cyrus. Give me a break. Kate Middleton. Okay. Angela Merkel. Malala Yousafzai. And Kathleen Sebelius. Kathleen Sebelius may be on the list as one of the most influential people, but that is a nefarious designation for her. But here's the real issue. The Republican Party is unwilling to admit, because their failing is that they cannot go back on what has been committed to by them, by their handlers. Rather than adhere to his oath, and I'm speaking specifically about John Boehner here, but you can remove Boehner's name and substitute John McCain. You can put in anybody that you want in that group, because there's probably there's less than you can count on one hand of true faithful conservatives in both the House and the Senate. Out of 535 members, we'd be hard-pressed to find 5 worthy of salvage. And that's the truth. Rather than adhere to their oaths and their principles and reflect the integrity and the honor that they're, as an elected representative, they will turn on those who elected them and trusted them. Why, you ask? I mean, what is with these people? Well, I'll tell you why. Their corporate masters are calling in their loans. They're making a margin call. And they're saying, look, you accepted our money, and you made a commitment and a promise to us. And you sold out your principles a long time ago. So we don't want to hear anything more about how you need to do the right thing. Because you sold yourself to us a long time ago. You made a deal with the devil. And now the due has come. You see, the truth is, they would rather align themselves with betrayal and tyranny, because the price of adherence to their rightful duty as your elected representative, truly doing the work in the best interest of the nation, would result in their dismissal. They would lose their power. They would lose their influence. They would lose their money. They would lose their privilege. Privilege that lets them live like kings and queens in any nation on earth. Mark my words, the lifestyle that your representatives lead, both Democrat and Republican, is on a par with anything that you would see in terms of decadence and opulence in almost any nation in the world. You know, people think, wow, the King of Norway, he must live really well. Let me tell you something. Your U.S. Senator lives as well or better than the King of Norway. You know why? Because they wield more power than the King of Norway. They have more black money. They have more PAC money. They say they have these monies funneled into their PAC funds that are exempt from campaign election law, and they live on it. They're out there buying sharkskin suits on this money. They're flying around in first class. They're treated to caviar and the best wining and dining. They walk into a restaurant and they have the best seat at the table. These are men who are far away from their families for most of their year. And they're introduced to the finest looking women who make a midnight visit to their home or their vacation spot in Washington. Let me tell you something. They have absolutely no care or concern for you, because they're making sure that their bread is buttered irrespective of what you're looking for. You know, Pelosi came out the other day and said, Boehner told me to wait until next year for immigration reform. And I've no doubt that perhaps for the first time in her life, this sea hag of the heart of darkness is actually telling the truth. The adage that there is no honor among thieves is not only prevalent here, it's exemplified. They cut their deals in back rooms, in secret negotiations, basically selling us out and violating their sworn oath to protect and defend this nation, not only from all enemies domestic or all enemies foreign, but those domestic, including the greatest enemy of the American people right now, the government in Washington, D.C., of which they are a part. And they have absolutely no problem leading us as a nation down the path of destruction as long as they get theirs. You see, that's the problem with America. That's the pervasive attitude is, I got to get mine. And the hell with you. I got to get mine. And it doesn't really matter whether you win, lose, or draw. I got to get mine. And if I can benefit you in some small way while I'm on my journey to success and personal ease and comfort, okay. But if it means I got to betray you in order to accomplish that goal, I have no problem doing that. Tyranny knows no honor, and it knows no integrity. And these people are bathed in tyranny. This is simply a falling out between traitors. Nancy spills the beans on Boehner because she sees that she can get some traction out of that. You see, and make no mistake, if you don't think that this was a calculated release, you're making a serious mistake. She thinks she can get some traction, make some headway by spilling their little secret. And she has no qualms about using any weapon at her disposal. This woman is a black widow. Boehner, to be honest with you, is just a low intelligence traitor who's sitting there willing to do whatever it takes to continue in his position. The one he's unwilling to give up. You see, the real issue, folks, is that the United States of America is now living as a police state. I'm going to just say what everybody else won't say. And the people who are in authority here, they're the real extremists. You know, I talked to you the other day, and I broke this out on this Capital City Project Amnesty.com website, where the lawmakers who oversee the government surveillance programs out here receive millions of dollars from the intelligence companies that they're supposed to be watchdogging. You see, the truth is that these people are, the corruption in them is so deep that you cannot, at this stage in the game, expect them to turn things around. Now, I'm going to tell you why Ted Cruz is the third most influential person in America. The real truth is that he's influential because Americans have seen in him that which they expected from all of our representatives all along. The media will be out there and tell you that, and they'll constantly marginalize the constitutional conservatives out there. They're extremists. They're bomb throwers. They're terrorists. You heard that kind of talk coming out of the Democrats during the budget and the debt deals and all of these other treasonous, malfeasant betrayals. Well, let me just tell you something. You see, the constitutional conservatives in the United States are not a ragtag bunch of extremists. We're not actually a minority. They want you to be convinced that you are, because if they can convince you that you are alone, you will collapse in cowering fear and despair. They'll do anything to keep you from knowing the truth of the power that you wield. The real truth is, the Ministry of Propaganda has allowed and lets America believe that this is a small minority group. The true minority group, I have to tell you, are those progressives out there who are about 10 or 11%. The rest of America, and there's certainly that group in the middle that doesn't really care one way or the other because they're so ridiculously infatuated with whatever it is that they're doing that they're not paying attention to the situation around them. They have zero situational awareness. But I got to tell you, the rest of America, the 70% of the nation who is paying at least moderate attention, they are the true majority. But you see, we're fractured, and they want to keep it that way. The Ministry of Propaganda will never let America know that there is a resurgence going on in this nation of patriotic thought and constitutional conservatism. Self-reliance, self-governance, self-preservation as a nation. That's the truth. That's what's really happening. Americans are coming awake literally by the millions. They tell you the youth is all for Obama. But the truth of the matter is, every once in a while, a little bit of the truth leaks through. I saw an interview the other day with a guy who was out there getting youth to opt out of the Obamacare mandate. He's been extraordinarily successful. Obama even actually addressed that issue in a speech. He said, with incredulity, he said, "Can you believe that there's people out there actually encouraging youth not to sign up?" No, what they're doing, Mr. President, is they are encouraging people not to fall under the thumb of dependency and tyranny. They're encouraging people not to submit their personal information so that you can build dossiers on who is and is not an enemy of the state. The truth is, there's a resurgence of patriots in this nation who seek to return the Constitution to its rightful place as the guidebook for our political and our national life. And we are in a fight and in a battle for our very lives. Anyone who tells you different has an axe to grind, and they've got a dog in the hunt, and it ain't in your benefit. That's the truth. The true number of Americans who seek a return to these constitutional principles would stagger the minds of most Americans if they truly understood. They don't dare allow you to hope and or feel like you're in sync with the vast majority of the nation. They want you marginalized. They want you fearful. They want you cowering. They want you believing that you are alone in your despair. And it's all a lie. Ask your friends. Ask the people that you work with. Go around and do an informal poll. Be creative about it. And go out there and say to those folks, what do you think of of the way in which our government is dealing with us as Americans right now? Are they being honest? Do they really have our best interest at heart? And I bet you'd be surprised at the response. Even people who are progressively on the liberal side of things will say, well, no, not really. But, we have to get through this stuff in order to hit the utopia. They can explain it away that way. The people in Germany did the same thing. They said, well, look, we got to, you got to break a few eggs to make an omelet. Really? Well, when that egg happens to be you and your family, not so much. They want you to feel utterly and totally powerless. Meanwhile, the country is amuck. There was a statement out the other day by Krauthammer, and he's a syndicated columnist, and he is pretty he's pretty well received, and he's well respected on both sides of the aisle politically, ideologically, right? I don't mean politically when I say Democrat and Republican. I mean ideologically. And he came out and made a statement the other day about these new Obamacare rules where the president is just, willy-nilly throwing out rules and regulations. And Sebelius the other day came out and actually told the software developer that they are not entitled, they are not allowed, and they are barred and prohibited by a non-disclosure portion of their contract from giving Congress information in their oversight hearings. And she's actually refused to produce the documentation. In fact, Daralisa the other day made a statement that she is under threat for criminal obstruction of justice. And here's what Krauthammer said. This is exactly a reaction to a deep understanding among Democrats that Obamacare is a train wreck. And it's a panic reaction. I'm going to finish this quote, but prior to that, Judge Napolitano had made a quote. He says, as the judge said, this is utterly lawless. This now approaches banana republic lawlessness. The only difference is that here, when you get presidential decrees, it's done on a conference call instead of from the balcony of the presidential mansion. That's the only difference. You see, the truth of the matter is, folks, it's becoming apparent to everyone. I said when Obama won in 2012 that it wouldn't be long before the mask would come off and America would see the true face of evil. And I'm telling you right now that you're beginning to start seeing that now as we move forward. The face of evil is exposing itself. It's not like the veil is ripped away. It's like the veil is slowly either dissolving or inching off. And you can start to see the features, the hideous fear and the evil that resides underneath. I'm telling you that we are in the throes of a battle for our very nation. I'm telling you that you are in the throes of a battle for your very life. I'm telling you that you are a soldier in the war that will protect and determine whether your family lives or dies in slavery and utter devastation. Some people say, that's way too harsh. Okay, you can say that. But at some point in time, and it's not going to be long from now, one of us is going to be right. And I'll bet money it's me. You know why? Because the truth is there for everyone and anyone to see. And those who aren't willing to look, well, that's on them. But the truth is, it's here for you to see. I posted a video up on our YouTube channel over the weekend, and it's a series of vignettes, little snippets taken from these people in Congress who consistently and routinely lie to us. And even some of their own words give you an inkling of what's to come. But if you're not listening, and if you're only listening to them as an isolated statement, you can't really kind of in your mind get your arms around the enormity of this. Because it's such a vast sea change difference from what you've always known and what you've always believed. You've been indoctrinated to believe that America is operating in a lawful and meaningful fashion with your best interests at heart. That could not be further from the truth. And the pace, the acceleration with which this destruction is moving forward, it's frightening. It is very scary indeed. We are shortly and rapidly running out of time. The question is, will you arise and stand against what's going on here? Will you take action? And I do mean action. No, I don't want you to grab a rifle and go out and find the first guy that you think looks like a traitor and take him out. That would be foolish. And it would be descending to their level. There are a few manners and a few methodologies of peaceful resolution to this. One is Convention of the States. I get it. It's fraught with a lot of fear. It's fraught with some concerns. It's fraught with issues that could turn against us. The second manner, and we'll talk further about, constitutional changes when we talk further about Convention of States. I'm going to try to work on that this week, so I can give you a broad overview and maybe dig down a little bit into what the implications are for this, a pro and a con list, if you will. But make no mistake, this is no excuse for you not to do your own homework. You have to. Remember, the rule here is never accept what I say to be factual or accurate. These are my opinions. Your opinion is what's going to matter. And you can only formulate that opinion when you actually have the intellectual capacity to recognize and use the critical thinking skills to develop what's on both sides of the coin and form your own opinion based upon all of the available information to you. You gather enough information, you make an informed opinion, and then you're open-minded enough and critical thinking enough to recognize that situations may come to fore that will change your ideas and opinions. But you never adopt anyone else's, mine included. All right, you've been listening to America's Voice Now. We're going to take a quick break. When we return, we're going to tackle the GOP and how that phrase now is looking like it ought to spell betrayal. Almost everything that party's doing now is against the best interests of the nation. We'll be right back.
It's about the restoration of our republic. We want to educate, encourage, enable the power. We stand for integrity, honesty, self-reliance, self-defense, and most importantly, no compromise on our foundational principles. This is America's Voice Now.
Find America's Voice Now on Facebook and at americasvoicenow.org. Here's Michael Evans.
All right. Good morning, America. You're listening to America's Voice Now. My name is Michael Evans. I'll be your host here. We're in the third segment of our Monday show on 12/16. For those of you that are listening live on our website, glad to have you on board. A couple of things I want to kind of bring to your attention, by the way. There is going to be a meeting. I just referenced and mentioned the issue of the Convention of States. And I want to tell you about a meetup. If you're local, there's a meetup that's going to happen at the Campaign for Liberty group on December 19th. Now, that's going to occur in West Plains. And the meeting is going to start at 6:45. If you want to come at 6 early, you can eat there. It's going to be held at the Skillets Restaurant in West Plains. The venue's a little bit bigger there than the normal place where Campaign for Liberty meets. But the reason why I'm telling you this is because the speaker there is going to be Keith Carmichael. Now, he's going to speak on the concept of this Convention of the States movement and the Article 5 solution that's out there for us. I know you've been wondering what it all means. You've heard about it. You heard about Mark Levin's book. You've kind of heard the phrase Convention of the States, Article 5 solution, Constitutional Convention, a con. You've heard all of these. You've heard good things, bad things. You don't know what to think. Well, utilizing the critical thinking skills that God has given you, now is the time for you to find out. Now is your chance to become educated, to be informed, to be motivated, and then to be activated. And I'm suggesting that you should come and not only bring a friend, but bring 2 or 4 or 6, 8, maybe 10. The truth is, if this is one of the outs we've got to our current demise, then you owe it to yourself and those around you and those who are counting on you to educate yourself about it. Now, I'll tell you what I will do. I will stream this particular event on our website that night for those people who are interested in hearing about it but don't have access to come here locally. Because, as I mentioned this morning when I was sitting here starting the program, there are folks all over the nation who are watching this program via our website. And they're not within local broadcast radio distance. And, of course, they certainly can't drive here on a Monday night or a Wednesday night or Thursday, whatever the heck it is. That's going to be the 19th. So that would put it the 19th is the Thursday. My apology. I'm having a brain freeze. So Thursday night, the 19th, I'll stream this program on our website live where you would normally watch this program. And the reason that I'm going to do that is because I want you to have an opportunity to hear what the Convention of States is all about. I want you to hear what the Article 5 solution is. Now, I'm not saying that you're going to take Keith Carmichael's version of this and run with it. I'm not going to, and you need to be cognizant of some of the issues that surround the issue of Article 5. There are some legitimate concerns that come into play with that. But I want you to at least have the beginnings of gathering of information, right? Listen, I want you to look at it from this perspective. If you're hungry and you're on the verge of starvation, you need to gather enough berries to fill your belly. You don't just eat one and say, okay, that's enough. You eat one and then another and a handful. And you continue to eat until your hunger is sated. It's the same with information. If you're unwilling to sit down and look at all of the available information on a topic, you're never going to be sated. And you'll make a mistake of putting your eggs in a basket that's not worthy of your trust and your efforts. We are very, very close to having almost no solutions left. You've heard me say it many, many times because I've actually given you the quote from Winston Churchill. If you will not fight for the right when you can easily win without bloodshed, if you will not fight when your victory will be sure and not too costly, you may come to the moment when you will have to fight with all the odds against you and only a precarious chance of survival. In fact, there may even be a worse case. You may have to fight when there is no hope of victory because it is better to perish than live as slaves. You see, we're in this window. We do have an opportunity to fight here where we can win without bloodshed. But that window is closing. The victory now can actually be sure, and it can be relatively not too costly to us. I'm not saying it's going to be free. But I got to tell you, I see America waiting until the crisis has struck. I see America blithely going along in ignorance, hoping beyond hope that something's going to change it for them. Someone is going to change it for them. And we're going to get to the point where we have to fight with all the odds against us and barely a precarious chance of survival. If we allow it to get to that point, because he made this comment in the 40s and the late 30s. In fact, he made it, I believe, in 1939. But with the current capability that our government has in terms of military and surveillance and monitoring and all of these things, if we allow it to get to that point, we may jump over the point where we have the odds are mostly against us and we have a precarious chance of survival and find ourselves in the fight where there is almost no hope of victory, but we're willing to fight anyway because it is better to perish in that fight than to live as a slave. And I mean that literally. I know there's people out there that will say, you're way over the top. Okay. I get it. That's what they thought in 1939 in Britain. That's why he said it. In fact, I just pulled it up. March 31st, 1939, Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain had informed the House of Commons in Britain that Britain would support Poland against any action that threatened its independence. This marked the end of submission to Germany. Churchill thought the decision should have been made sooner, when it would have been easier to stop Germany. And history tells you the rest of the story. The truth is, Neville Chamberlain, who was the prime minister at the time, constantly appeased Nazi Germany. Well, they'll be satisfied if we just let them, they'll stop there. Here's the problem, folks. Tyranny never stops. Tyranny never stops. The GOP, those people that you think represent you, have almost 100% failed to meet the call. There are very, very, very few individuals in the GOP. And I'll be honest with you, even a guy like Cruz and Mike Lee, I have mistrust for. I grant you they're doing the right thing now. But what will it take before they fall to corruption, coercion, manipulation? I mean, you know, I read you the lyrics to that song, The Dogs of War. And I got to tell you, I don't have any doubt in my mind that if this regime felt that there was a way to marginalize Cruz and Lee, that they wouldn't take that. And that could come down to a point where they would eliminate them. The Tea Party says that Boehner's declared war on them. They're absolutely correct. He has. This is the same Tea Party that saved Boehner. This is the same Tea Party that literally saved the Republicans and kept this country from having a second term with this president with a 100% aligned Congress with his ideology and his political party. He's throwing out there that these right-wing organizations are over the top. He's repeatedly attacked them and said that, you know, they're unrealistic. You see, let me tell you why Cruz is so popular. Because he's actually doing what people expect their representative to do. And instead of actually sitting down and doing what they know to be the right thing, to standing up for the principles that they were elected to follow, they've completely capitulated. I'll tell you why people like Ted Cruz. And he went home, by the way, after his, 12-hour or whatever the heck that was, 21-hour, thing on the government shutdown. He went home to a hero's welcome. The truth of the matter is, a guy like Cruz and a guy like Lee represent, for the first time in our living memory, what we expect of a representative. And it's not that they're doing such a great job. It's just that the comparison against those who are betraying us is so stark that we are like stunned. It's like turning on the light switch in a darkened room, and for a moment, your eyes are just taken back. The truth is, we've been blinded to the concept of just somebody who's doing what they're supposed to be doing. And we're so enamored with the one guy who steps up out of the shadows, or the two guys, and I'm not throwing Mike Lee under the bus here by any stretch of the imagination, but when a couple of people step up and actually do what they're supposed to do, we're stunned by that. And we're calling them heroes. They're not heroes. They're just people doing what they're supposed to do. They're patriots. Snowden is no hero. He's a patriot. He's an American. He says, I'm not a patriot. He says, I'm not a hero. I'm an American. He knows that this is what every American should espouse. He knows that this is what we all should stand for. And he says, I'm not so vastly above the crowd. I'm just doing what we should all be doing. Have we sunk so low that we don't recognize that this is an obligation of each and every one of us? Are we so surprised by one guy who actually stands up for principle that we have to put him up on our shoulders and march him around as a hero? If that is the case, it's because we have allowed ourselves to become so dumbed down, so anesthetized by betrayal, that when we do see that ray of hope, it looks like we've been let out of a cave for the first time in 10 years, and we're seeing sunshine. It's not that Cruz and Lee and Snowden are doing such a great job. It's that we haven't seen anyone do anything even remotely close to that in so long that we're stunned by it. The truth is, their behavior should be the behavior of everyone in office, in everyone in a position of authority. And the sad truth is that it is so rare for it to actually occur. Then when it does, we're swooned. We're stunned by their courage, their bravery, in the face of what? Evil, betrayal, tyranny, lies, deceit, power, ego, money, fame, fortune. What? And there's a lot of people out there that say, you know what? You're too polarizing. Well, I get that. And you know why? Because when people hear the truth, it hurts. Because it's the kind of truth that we all know and have in the back of our minds, but we're unwilling to vocalize. I'm just saying what everybody else in the country's thinking, but nobody has the courage to come out and say. Or those who have the courage to come out to say it either don't have the platform to do it or can't, articulate it or whatever. There's plenty of Americans out there who are true patriots. There's plenty of Americans out there who are spilling the same news I'm spilling, by the way. I'm not alone in this. I just happen to be the one that you're listening to at the moment. I'm not giving myself some kind of kudos or credit here that I'm not entitled to. This isn't about me. This is about our nation. This is about you. This is about us. And this is about what are we willing to stand for. What this is about a reflection of who we are. And when we look at ourselves and refuse to admit the truth, we walk away from that mirror knowing that we have betrayed our own best self-interest. You know, I did a show one time called Self-Treason is the Worst Treason. And self-treason is the example of when you know, but you refuse to take action to correct the problem. This is the same treason that allows somebody to sit there and consistently say, I can quit drinking any time I want, when they're waking up and pulling a fifth of vodka out from underneath their bed just to get out of bed in the morning. This is the treason that has somebody who sits there and does methamphetamine to the point where they look in the mirror and they don't see that 103-pound skeleton in front of them, because they consistently lie to themselves and say, I could stop this anytime I want. This is the self-treason of the guy who sticks a needle in his arm 4 times a day and says, I don't need this, I can quit this. This is the treason of the gambler who is sitting there stealing from his employer and selling everything he can get his hands on so he can get back to that casino one more time. This is the treason of the American public who will sit there knowing what's coming and not take action. Not stand up and put all of their effort, all of their resources towards some sort of a solution that in the long term will actually benefit them directly. You know the path that you're on. And you know that continuing to do that methamphetamine, to shoot that needle into your arm, to sit there and continue that gambling, to sit there and continue drinking that vodka every morning just to get out of bed, has an end that is unimaginable. You know that the end result of that, all of that, is that it can only continue for so long before the whole thing implodes. And you know, just as sure as the sun will rise tomorrow morning, that to continue to allow what is happening to our nation right now will have an end that will be utterly, totally devastating. And it's not just to you. It's not just to your wife or your husband or your children or to your mother or your father. This is going to be a total devastation that will affect you and our progeny for untold generations. When the pillar of liberty and freedom fall here, the darkness that will envelop this planet will be complete. We will be in a dark age that may last hundreds, if not even thousands of years, if we live that long as a species. I'm telling you that the truth of the matter is you don't want to admit it, because to admit it means you've got to put it all on the line to fight back. And for whatever reason, whatever your personal thing is that's holding you back, you're unwilling to step up and recognize it. So you continue to sit there and vote for the Republican Party. Well, this one will be different. Really? How many times do you have to get fooled? You know what this reminds me of? When you were a little kid and the bully on the block would take your thing and he would hold it over your head and you'd keep jumping up and trying to get it. When all you really needed to do was draw back your leg and kick him really hard, right where it mattered. And then while he was doubled up on the ground, heaving and screaming in pain, you could have picked up your little toy and walked off. The power is there for you to do something about it. You're just unwilling to take the responsibility to knock the bully down. You've been listening to America's Voice Now. My name is Michael Evans. I am your host here. I would like for you to find us on the web and work with us. I'd like you to share the information that we expose here and hopefully use it to educate some other people in your circle of influence. I get it. Sometimes I'm too boisterous. Sometimes I'm too polarizing. I really don't care, because I've gotten to the point where trying to soft soap this and trying to explain to people in a nice way just ain't cutting it. And now the gloves are off. The mask of evil is slipped. So it's up to you to get educated and informed, and then to educate and inform and motivate and activate not only yourself, but those people in your circle of influence. If I can help you do that in any way, then I've accomplished the task. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about malfeasance in office and what we can actually do about it. We'll be right back. Stick with us. All right. We're back. So, we had a hearing the other day in Washington. And I was stunned to hear the truth. I wasn't surprised. I was just kind of stunned by the total capitulation, I guess is the right phrase, there was this guy who was holding a hearing. His name is Rohrbacher, Republican out of California. And he was having this hearing about the situation in Afghanistan. And this was supposed to be an organization or a group of people who were answering the Foreign Affairs Committee on situation as it stood. And he asked them how much they were spending in Afghanistan. And I wish you could see the video. I encourage you to go to our website and see it, because it was actually like crickets. I'm going to play it for you so you can hear the audio portion of it, but you can't see the incredulity on the face of this dude when he asks these questions and he can't get a simple answer. Representative Jerry Connolly, a Democrat from Virginia, called the witnesses' inability to rattle off the facts a stunning development. He said to them, "How can you come to a congressional oversight hearing on this subject and not know these answers? Like that wouldn't be a question on the tip of one's tongue." Really was stunning. Because these people are charged with knowing the answers. I mean, these are the people who are prosecuting that war. And what really bothered me was not even so much the fact that they couldn't talk about money. It's one thing to talk about how much money we're spending. It's a completely different story altogether when you're talking about they couldn't tell these questioners how many men and women had been killed or injured in the last 12 months. That was the question. I want you to listen to it. This was, just to set it up, on Monday, this was a House Foreign Affairs Committee hearing on Afghanistan. Representative Dana Rohrbacher, from Republican from California, asked 3 Obama administration specialists some simple questions, and he couldn't get any answers. It's really beyond the pale of stunning.
Don't know where to begin here. How much are we spending annually in Afghanistan now? How much is the cost to the American taxpayer?
Silence.
Anybody know?
For the record, they're looking at each other.
I think each of us have somewhat different budgets there. The total budget,
what would be? Nobody knows the total budget, what we're spending in Afghanistan. It's a hearing on Afghanistan. Can I have an estimate?
I'm sorry, Congressman.
I'll just have to say that it's disheartening to have a briefing from our government people who are involved in a project, and they can't tell me how much we're spending annually. And
it is an amount.
How many killed and wounded have we suffered in the last 12 months? Mr. Dumont, would you know that?
Silence.
Sir, I do not. I'll have to get back with you on that one also.
We don't know what the cost is, and we don't even know how many killed and wounded are. And we're supposed to believe that you fellas have a plan that's going to end up in a positive way in Afghanistan? Holy cow.
We do.
You see, the simple truth is that these people are so inept. This is the ambassador, folks. Guy by the name of James Dobbins. He's a overweight, balding, pencil-pushing, bureaucratic, pencil-necked geek. How could he dare go to a congressional hearing and not have the most basic answers? You see, if this happened in a corporate boardroom, and the chairman of the board or the chief executive officer was expecting people to come in and report to him about a specific project they were working on, and Rohrbacher called it a project when the truth is it's a war. But if a CEO asked you to come in and explain where you are on a given project, and you couldn't answer where you were budgetarily or how many people you had working on it, or what progress was, or what the end game of the project was. I mean, if you can't say what that project is supposed to accomplish, you wouldn't be fired. He would cover his microphone, or he would just say to the board or the rest of the meeting, I'm going to ask you to hold on for a moment here. And he'd whistle somebody in, and he would whisper in their ear. And at the end of that meeting, you would go to walk out of there, and they would grab you by both arms as security, and they would escort you to the front door. They would hand you a box of the 10 things that they bothered to pick up off your desk and tell you if you come back into the building again, you'll be arrested for trespassing. But you see, because we are talking here about people who have an incredible amount of authority and an extraordinarily broad amount of power, which they are clearly abusing, this goes beyond mere incompetence, ineptitude. This is malfeasance, a criminal malfeasance. Now, if you don't know what the word malfeasance means, malfeasance is when your attorney stands up in the middle of the courtroom and he says, Your Honor, my client admitted guilt to me, and because it was a heinous crime, I don't have the courage, I don't have I can't just be silent. I have to tell the truth. Malfeasance would be you give your family member access to your bank account and they wipe it out and go on a drug spree or a spending spree, or just malfeasance is when your accountant steals your money. But you see, that's all business malfeasance. There are civil penalties for that and some criminal penalties. You know, an attorney who steals your money from you, if you hand your attorney money to hold in a trust account and he abuses that privilege and that trust that you've given to him, he can be prosecuted. He can lose his law license. He can even go to jail. But when we're talking here about people who are not representing their own interests, but the larger interests of our nation, and they are tasked with the authority to act on our behalf, it approaches the different level of a high crime. High crime not meaning big, but high meaning an abuse of power so heinous that these people should be charged with criminal malfeasance, high crimes and misdemeanors, prosecuted, and then hung. And I do mean that. Upon a guilty verdict, they should be executed. You know why? Because the truth is, even when given the opportunity to come forth and explain themselves, they couldn't. Ambassador James Dobbins, he's the top envoy to Afghanistan and Pakistan. And here's what he said. Well, he came back out and as a follow-up, he offered State Department and U.S. Agency for International Development spent $2 billion a year there, and there have been about 2,200 casualties since 2001. That's the answer he came up with. After the hearing now, right? Guess what? About 2,200 casualties? No. The truth is there's been 2,292 American fatalities alone, and we're not even talking about woundings. So far this year, 113 American lives have been lost, killed. And that's the lowest number we've had since 2004. The truth is, this war costs us not $2 billion a year, but $6.7 billion a month. And this guy is running it? You see, the idea that these people don't have any clue about a war that they are in charge of prosecuting, not only not on the tip of their tongue, but even when they produce the information later and it's inaccurate. That is a level of malfeasance that is beyond criminal and becomes a national crime, a crime against the nation. Therein lies the high crime and misdemeanor threshold being reached. That's essentially what it is, folks. Nothing less and nothing more. The real problem here is these are only 3 people in a government made up of literally tens of thousands of others who are just like them. There is not a hair's breadth of difference in these people, those over at the EPA, those over at the FAA, the FCC, the DEA, the DHS, the CIA, You know, some of these agencies are less likely to involve life and limb of our youth, but they're all wasting our treasure and they have no idea where it is other than what they can pocket for themselves. But when we're talking about the lives of our youth, and here's a guy who's living literally on the lives of young American men and women. That's what he makes his living at. He makes his living as an ambassador to 2 countries that we're embroiled in a war with, where young American men are coming back with limbs missing, eyes missing, brain injuries that will never allow them to live and function as they did before. We're talking about families who are losing their fathers and their mothers. We're talking about children who will never know what it's like to grow up with a dad or a mom. We're talking about people coming back to this nation with horrific injuries that for all intents and purposes, their life will never be the same. And this 2-bit piece of trash doesn't even know how many. See, that is a level that should be so intolerable to the American people that this ambassador Dobbins, and he's the dolt just like his name sounds, this guy in the days of our forefathers would have been dragged out and tarred and feathered. He would have been put on trial. They would have shown the evidence against him for his clear abuse of his authority and his power, his complete and utter malfeasance. They would have found him guilty, and they would have hung him. And he's one of thousands upon thousands upon thousands who are just like him. You've got a president who will lie right to the face of the American people. You want to know why the government is full of Mr. Dobbins? Well, it started long before Barack Obama came on the scene. But you see, they're emboldened by the example of the chief executive officer. Well, if he's so disreputable, if he's such a buffoon, if he's so inept that he doesn't know about this until he reads about it on the cover of the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal, why should it matter that I don't do my job? If he is encouraging domestic government-sponsored terrorism against our nation, why shouldn't I, says the EPA? Why shouldn't I, says the DHS? Why shouldn't I, says the IRS? Why shouldn't we, says the NSA and the FBI? I mean, that's what we have achieved, ladies and gentlemen. You have no risk of dying from an Iranian attack. I mean, the odds that you will be injured in a terrorist attack in the United States of America are relatively infinitesimal. The odds that your own government will be the cause of your demise, at this point in time, are the only odds that matter, and they're about 100%. You may get lucky and die of a heart attack or old age before the tyranny turns from soft to hard, but make no mistake about it. Right now, your federal government has a fist that is made of stainless steel and titanium. It's shiny, it's hungry, and it can't wait to get its grip on your throat. But it is covered. It's covered by a thick glove of velvet. And it doesn't stop it from doing damage. But you just don't realize the amount of damage it's capable of. And when that glove comes off, and we've about reached that point, you will see a terror unleashed on this nation by your own government that would be the stuff of Hollywood. You know, Ted Deutsch, I'm not quite sure how you pronounce his name. He's a Democrat from Florida. And he was talking about this thing with Karzai going back and forth because they're trying to extend our forces agreement over there, the long-term security project. And they want to extend this thing. And Karzai is bucking them. He just signed and agreed to a deal with Iran, which ought to tell us everything we know to stop the negotiations and just pull out. And this guy actually says, well, the patience of the Congress and the American people is wearing thin. With all due respect, Mr. Deutsch, that is an understatement of mammoth proportion. We're not wearing thin. We are very, very upset about the fact that literally tens of thousands of our soldiers are either dead or are damaged beyond all recognition and repair. We are very, very upset about the fact that you are loading our military fighting force with drugs, antipsychotic medications, that you're experimenting on them like lab rats, that you are siphoning off the treasure of our nation, that you are simultaneously allowing the growth of the domestic product of poppy, which is the number one crop over there, which, by the way, the Taliban actually kept in check, and it has reached record proportions because you're using that to siphon that dope into the United States of America to keep the rest of the population at bay, to keep them dumb, addicted, dependent, and forgetful. This is the regime that will be the downfall of the greatest nation on earth. It's the last in a long line of traitors. Obama is not the guy who's responsible for all of this. This has been going on for the last 120 years in a real focused effort. They got this problem. It's not that the Constitution is a problem. I'll tell you what the real problem is. It's the problem that for the first 100 years of this country, everybody was taught to believe that your liberty and your freedom were the only thing that mattered. And that's a hard thing to get out of people's minds. And they're trying to win your heart and mind by dependency and enslavement, but willful. The other problem they've got is some half a billion firearms in this country, and they cannot figure out for the life of them how to get rid of them. See, that's the difference between us and every other nation that's had a constitution that said the rights of the people come first and foremost. Mao had that in China. Stalin had that in Russia. Germany had that when Hitler reigned. And they all found ways around it. We're doing the same. The National Defense Authorization Act of 2012, 2013, and now 2014 are building a systematic infrastructure that is the gallows of liberty and freedom. And I will reiterate the words of Mr. Franklin, that we will all either hang together or assuredly we will all hang separately. We've reached a crisis point in our nation, ladies and gentlemen. And I'm one of many, many Paul Reveres out there shouting from the rooftops, America, awaken, arise, be counted, be fearless and be fierce, be courageous, speak out, even when your voice shakes with fear. There are 20, 30, 40,000 Mr. Dobbins. There is an entire government built on tyranny and treason that's running this nation. And we're either going to stand up and fight against it, or we're going to capitulate into the utter darkness. I, for one, won't go quietly. I hope I'm not alone. You've been listening to America's Voice Now. Please find us on the web by visiting americasvoicenow.org or .com. Please find our Facebook page and hit the like button, because then when we post stories, it kind of gets spread. Goes viral. And that's what we're trying to do, is educate everybody around us, right? Help us share with your circle of influence. And then share those stories that you see on there that are of interest to you. You can also find us on YouTube, on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/America's Voice Now, and facebook.com/America's Voice Now. Basically, just type the phrase into your browser, America's Voice Now, and you'll find us everywhere. We'll be back tomorrow morning. Have yourselves a great day.